The Xerthians arrived on Earth with an air of superiority. Their ships hovered above major cities, their sleek and towering forms casting long shadows over the streets. They had traveled across the stars to witness the so-called primitive species known as humans. They believed their superior technology and centuries of knowledge made them the apex of all life in the universe, and humanity was nothing but an insignificant blip on their radar. They observed quietly at first, taking in the bustling human activity. Below, they watched the people rush through their lives, unaware of the visitors from another world. The Xerthians found themselves amused at the ways humans interacted with each other, their clumsy gestures, and their primitive tools. They scoffed at the unrefined nature of human civilization. To them, Earth was a curiosity, but nothing more. After several days of observation, they decided it was time to make their presence known. They broadcast a message to the people of Earth in the most widely spoken languages of the planet. They mocked humanity's history, calling their accomplishments laughable. They ridiculed their technological advances and dismissed their artistic and cultural achievements as childlike. They spoke of humans as though they were pets to be studied with no true value of their own. They claimed that the humans would never amount to anything in the grand scheme of the universe, that their future would always be limited to their tiny planet and their petty conflicts. They did not hold back in their derision, believing that such an advanced species as themselves could never be challenged by something so inconsequential. The Xerthians did not expect the reaction they received. Humans were confused at first hearing the message, but soon their confusion turned to anger. They gathered in the streets, shouting at the sky, demanding answers and explanations for the intrusion into their world. But as the days went by, something stranger began to happen. Subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. The ridicule seemed to stir something within the human collective. A response began to form, not of fear, but of defiance. People who had never met each other before began to speak with a strange urgency. They shared dreams of an ancient past, of something forgotten buried deep within the human spirit, something connected to their very origins. They began to whisper a language in their sleep, a language that was not their own but felt oddly familiar. The Xerthians continued their broadcasts, unconcerned, believing the anger would pass, that the humans would soon return to their meaningless lives. But the whispers grew louder as the days passed. The humans, who had once been seen as weak and insignificant, began to change. Something within them was awakening, a power that the Xerthians had not anticipated. The language they had mocked was not just words, it was a force, something embedded within the very fabric of humanity's being. As humans began to speak the ancient language, their world began to respond. They could not yet understand it fully, but the effects were undeniable. Machines malfunctioned, electrical grids flickered, reality itself seemed to bend, as if the ancient words were shaping it in ways the humans could not control. The Xerthians noticed, but did not fully comprehend the significance of what was happening. They were about to learn just how dangerous their mockery had been. As the whispers of the ancient language grew louder across the globe, something began to shift within humanity. A connection deeper than anyone could comprehend was being forged with the past. It was as though the language itself was calling out to them, resonating with something buried in their very DNA, a forgotten inheritance from an ancient civilization long lost to time. The people who began to speak the language felt it course through them like a current of pure power. It was more than just words, it was a key to something much greater, something beyond the limits of human understanding. But as the first humans who discovered the language tried to speak it aloud, the effects were unpredictable. At first, a small group of individuals in isolated parts of the world began to experience strange phenomena. Electricity surged and shorted in their vicinity. Objects moved without explanation, and those who spoke the words felt an overwhelming surge of energy flooding their minds. But it wasn't until a young woman in a remote village in India said the words aloud in a moment of panic that the full extent of the language's power became clear. Her words were not meant to cause harm, but as she spoke the ancient tongue, a massive tremor shook the ground beneath her feet. The earth cracked open, as if responding to the power of her voice. Buildings collapsed in a 20-mile radius. Trees uprooted themselves, and the sky itself seemed to darken in an instant. Panic spread across the region as news of the catastrophe made its way across the globe. But even in the wake of destruction, something else became apparent. The woman who had spoken the language was unharmed, and the world around her seemed to bend and shift, as though reality itself had been altered by her words. The people who had gathered around her stared in awe and fear as they realized what had just happened. They had seen the power of the ancient tongue firsthand. This event sparked a worldwide frenzy. Humans across the globe began to experiment with the language, speaking the ancient words and attempting to unlock the secrets it held with each utterance. New and strange occurrences followed. Some used the words in anger and caused violent storms to erupt, while others spoke in a moment of sorrow and watched as the atmosphere shifted and healed the damage around them. Some found that the more they spoke the language, the more attuned they became to it. It was as if the language was alive, a living force that responded to the intent of the speaker. Others tried to reverse the effects, but were unsuccessful. It was clear now that the language was not just a relic of the past, it was a living power that was linked to the very fabric of the universe. The Xerthians, who had been watching the unfolding events from their orbiting ships, grew increasingly concerned. They had initially dismissed the humans as insignificant, but now they saw that something was happening that was beyond their comprehension. The humans were tapping into a force that even the Xerthians could not control. They scrambled to understand what was occurring. They had no knowledge of the language that humans were speaking, but they knew enough to realize it was not something to be taken lightly. Soon the Xerthians began to send their own emissaries to Earth to try and gain control over the humans, and their newfound power. They believed they could control the situation and suppress the humans' abilities. But what they failed to realize was that the language had already begun to reshape humanity in ways they could never predict. The first direct encounter between humans and the Xerthians was inevitable. As the power of the ancient language grew, so did the human resistance groups who had begun to realize the immense potential within them. People from all walks of life now spoke the forgotten tongue with growing confidence, and they started to act on their newfound abilities. A collective movement formed, and humanity began to rise from the ashes of their earlier despair. They no longer cowered under the shadow of the Xerthians who had come to conquer them. The balance of power had shifted, but the Xerthians were not about to admit defeat. They had underestimated humanity before, and now they were preparing to make their move. In the dead of night, a small squadron of Xerthian ships descended upon a major human city, where a large gathering of resistance leaders had gathered. The Xerthians hoped to strike quickly and decisively to show humanity the futility of their newfound powers. But as they descended into the city, they encountered something they had not expected. The humans had already begun to use the ancient language in defense against them. The air around the ships seemed to warp and ripple, as if reality itself was being distorted by the force of the human utterances. One Xerthian ship tried to fire its weapons at a group of humans who had gathered in the city square, but before the blast could reach them, the weapon malfunctioned and exploded in midair. The humans had no technology to counter the Xerthians' weapons, but their words, their language, was proving to be far more powerful than the aliens could have anticipated. The humans who had unlocked the ancient tongue spoke it with a clarity and certainty that left the Xerthians unsettled. The ground beneath their ships cracked and heaved as if the very earth was trying to swallow them up. The Xerthians attempted to use their advanced technology to regain control, but each time they tried, their systems malfunctioned, their ships veered off course, or their weapons misfired. Humanity had no idea how they were doing it, but they were learning quickly how to manipulate reality with the language of their ancestors. A small group of human leaders stood at the center of the chaos, speaking the words with deliberate force. As the world around them began to change, the very fabric of time and space seemed to bend with their voices. One leader spoke with such passion that an entire Xerthian vessel was reduced to a field of energy that fizzled out of existence before anyone could react. The Xerthians were stunned. They had never seen anything like it. They had been under the false belief that their technology was the key to domination across the galaxy. Yet now they found themselves facing an opponent who was using the most primal of tools to tear their advanced systems apart. With nothing but words, the humans were proving that their strength did not lie in their technology, but in their connection to something much older, much more dangerous than anything the Xerthians had ever known. In their arrogance, they had overlooked the very foundation of humanity, the power of speech. The Xerthians scrambled to regroup, but the humans had already made their mark. The broadcast from the Xerthians had ended the moment their fleet had been overwhelmed. Now, the battle was no longer about military might, it was a battle of will, and humanity was rising in ways the Xerthians had not prepared for. As they regrouped in the shadows of the planet, they realized that the power they had once mocked was something they could never control or even fully understand. The language of the humans was not a simple relic of an old world. It was something far more profound, and they were about to learn just how dangerous it could be when used by the right hands. The humans, who had once been scattered and uncertain, now stood united. Their understanding of the ancient language deepened with each passing day as more and more individuals unlocked its secrets. The power they wielded was no longer a mystery to them. They had learned that the language was not just a means of communication. It was a force capable of manipulating reality itself. The people who had discovered it were no longer the same. They were becoming something more than human. They were beginning to tap into abilities that defied the laws of nature and defied the Xerthians' understanding of the universe itself. Word of these abilities spread quickly across the globe. As humanity's resistance grew stronger, new leaders emerged, guiding their people with the knowledge of the language and its power. These leaders were not kings or generals, but ordinary men and women who had learned to harness the ancient tongue with precision and control. As they spoke the words, the world around them began to change. Cities rebuilt themselves within moments. Entire landscapes shifted as if the earth itself was responding to their voices. Some humans used the language to heal the sick and injured, while others manipulated energy to protect their cities from further Xerthian attacks. But the most remarkable changes came from those who spoke the language with a sense of purpose and clarity. They began to alter the very fabric of reality itself, bending time and space to their will. As the humans grew more confident in their abilities, the Xerthians were forced to take notice. Their once indomitable ships now seemed fragile in comparison to the power humanity was unleashing. They had believed that their technology was the key to controlling the universe, but now they realized that they had been foolish to mock the humans. Their ships were no match for the raw energy of the ancient language. They had seen how easily the humans had disabled their weapons and dismantled their technology, and now they were faced with the realization that humanity had become a far greater threat than they had ever imagined. The Xerthians knew they had to act quickly or risk losing everything they had worked for. They decided to deploy their most advanced weapon, a device capable of nullifying the energy generated by the ancient language. But even as they prepared to unleash this weapon on Earth, something unexpected happened. The humans were no longer afraid. They had faced the Xerthians' mockery and their threats, and had emerged stronger for it. They were no longer the weak and insignificant species that the Xerthians had thought them to be. They had become the masters of a power that even the Xerthians could not control. The humans began to understand that the language was not just a tool for destruction. It was a tool for creation, a means of shaping the world around them. To their will, they had learned that with the right intent, they could create entire cities from nothing or heal entire ecosystems. With a single word, their power was limited only by their understanding of the language and their ability to focus their will. The more they learned, the more they realized the vast potential of the language, and the more determined they became to defend their world from the Xerthians. The Xerthians prepared for their final assault, but they were met with an unexpected challenge. The humans had already begun to use the language to defend themselves. They spoke with such force and conviction that the very air around them crackled with energy. The Xerthians' weaponry began to malfunction, and their ships faltered under the pressure of the human power. It was clear now that the humans had unlocked a force that even the Xerthians could not fathom, and the balance of power had shifted once again. The Xerthians had never experienced anything like this before. Their advanced weaponry and technology were useless against the humans' newfound power. Each time they attempted to strike at the heart of the human resistance, their ships were disarmed or destroyed before they could even launch a counterattack. The humans were not only resisting, they were reshaping the battlefield. In real time, entire fleets of Zerthian vessels turned to dust with a single word spoken by a leader who understood the ancient language. Its power surged through the atmosphere like a storm of pure energy, and the Zerthians found themselves unable to defend against it. They had relied too long on their technology, believing it to be the key to victory. But now they were facing an enemy who used nothing but the very essence of creation itself to bend the world to their will. In the midst of this chaos, the humans were not only defending themselves but beginning to turn the tide of war in their favor. Cities that had once been in ruins were now rebuilt almost overnight. Entire military bases were reconstructed from the ground up by those who could speak the language with ease. Entire ecosystems were restored in a matter of hours, as if the earth itself was responding to the will of the humans. As the resistance grew more powerful, they no longer feared the Zerthians. They had become more than capable of fighting back against their invaders with an ancient power that none could comprehend. The Zerthians began to panic. Their once confident demeanor had been replaced by a sense of urgency. They had underestimated humanity in a way they could never have predicted, and now they were on the brink of losing everything. Their most powerful weapon was ready to be deployed, a device capable of neutralizing the ancient language's power, but the humans had already seen through their plans. They had studied the Zerthian technology and learned to counteract it using the language itself. They had discovered how to neutralize the Zerthian weaponry by speaking the single word that would reverse the effect of the device. As the humans gathered their forces to launch a final assault on the Zerthian fleet, they spoke those words with a collective power that shook the heavens. As the Zerthians unleashed their final weapon, the humans spoke in unison, and the weapon disintegrated before it could even be activated. Their unity and understanding of the ancient language had become so powerful that they no longer needed to rely on technology to fight their battles. They had become the weapon themselves. Each word spoken was a blow to the Zerthians' arrogance. Each utterance chipped away at their belief in their own superiority. The Zerthian ships began to crumble and fall from the sky as the humans took control of the very forces the Zerthians had once used to enslave worlds. With the Zerthians' forces faltering and their fleet disintegrating, the humans pressed their advantage. They struck at the heart of the Zerthian command with precision and power born of their mastery of the language. Their victory was swift and complete. The Zerthians had no choice but to retreat. The humans had proven that no matter how advanced the technology of their enemies, no matter how much power the Zerthians had at their disposal, the humans were not to be underestimated. They had unlocked a force that transcended the stars themselves, and in doing so they had made a statement to the galaxy. No species would ever dare to ridicule or conquer humanity again. The battle was won, but the humans knew that this was only the beginning. They had only just begun to tap into the true potential of the ancient language, and the Zerthians' retreat was only a temporary setback in their journey to unlock the mysteries of the universe. They now stood on the edge of a new era, one where they were no longer the students of the cosmos, but its masters, ready to shape the future as they saw fit. As the Zerthian fleet retreated from Earth, the humans were left in the aftermath of their victory. Their cities were rebuilt, their forces were strengthened, but the battle was not over. The humans had come to realize that the ancient language they had unlocked was not just a tool for defense, it was a key to a much greater understanding of the universe. It was a language that resonated with the very fabric of existence itself, and they were only beginning to understand its full potential. No longer did they fear the stars or the unknown, for they knew that the ancient language had the power to shape reality, to create and to destroy, to bend time and space to their will. They had seen the truth, and now they were determined to master it completely. The world began to change in ways that were both wondrous and unsettling. Humanity was no longer bound by the limitations of their previous existence. With the language, they could manipulate matter and energy on a scale that had once been unimaginable. Entire regions of the planet were healed, ecosystems restored, and entire cities rebuilt in the blink of an eye. But with this power came great responsibility. Those who wielded the language began to realize that they were not just shaping the physical world, but the very flow of time itself. Some learned to glimpse into the past, and others into the future, and as they delved deeper into the mysteries of the language, they began to see the delicate balance that held the universe together. They understood that every word spoken had consequences not just for the present, but for the farthest reaches of time and space. Fear began to spread among some of the more cautious human leaders. They had seen the devastation the language could cause when used in anger or fear, and now they were confronted with a new dilemma. How could they ensure that such power would never again be used for destruction? They formed councils to oversee the use of the language, ensuring that only those with the utmost wisdom and discipline would be allowed to wield it. But as the councils grew in power, a new threat began to emerge, not from external forces, but from within the human race itself. Some had already begun to use the language not for creation, but for personal gain. They were altering reality to suit their desires, bending the world around them, to make them richer, more powerful, more influential, and in the dark corners of the earth others began to experiment with dangerous uses of the language, seeking to manipulate the very laws of nature itself in their quest for more control. As the internal conflict grew, tensions rose among the human factions. The resistance that had once united them now splintered into competing groups, each claiming to know the true way to wield the power of the ancient language. Some believed that the language should be used only to heal and protect the earth, while others saw it as a tool to dominate and reshape the world to their liking. The councils struggled to maintain order as the human race teetered on the brink of self-destruction. Their newfound power had brought them closer to the stars, but also to their own darker impulses. The language was not just a gift, it was a burden, one that humanity was still learning to bear. Meanwhile, the Xerthians watched from a distance, their fleet now in retreat. But their pride still wounded. They knew that humanity had become a force to be reckoned with, and though they had been defeated, they were not ready to admit their loss. They began to plot their next move, knowing that the humans would not remain content with their newfound power forever. There would be those among them who would seek to expand beyond their world, who would seek to unlock the language's greatest secrets, and they were ready to meet them once again, should humanity make that fateful choice. The human race had reached a crossroads. The power of the ancient language had allowed them to reshape the world, but it had also created deep divisions within their society. As factions grew more and more polarized, some pushed for the language to be used exclusively for peace and healing. Others sought to wield it as a weapon to expand their influence and secure their dominance over the rest of the planet. The councils that had been formed to protect the language's integrity now struggled to maintain order as corruption began to seep in. Individuals with personal agendas used the power for their own gain, while those who truly believed in the potential of the language to unite the world found themselves fighting against not only external forces, but internal ones as well. Trust had been shattered, and the once unified resistance was now divided into opposing camps. Amidst this turmoil, the humans received an unexpected message from the Xerthians. Their fleet had retreated, but they had not abandoned their plans to regain control of Earth. The message was not one of war, but of a strange and unsettling offer. The Xerthians claimed they had learned from their previous mistakes and were willing to come to an agreement with humanity. They acknowledged the power of the ancient language and offered to share their own knowledge of the cosmos in exchange for access to the language's deeper secrets. They believed that by combining their advanced technology with humanity's newfound ability to manipulate reality, they could achieve unimaginable feats of power. But the humans were deeply suspicious of the offer. The memory of the Xerthian invasion was still fresh in their minds, and many questioned whether the aliens' intentions were genuine or whether they sought to manipulate humanity once again. As the Xerthians waited in orbit, the human factions debated their next move. Some were eager to accept the offer, seeing it as an opportunity to gain further knowledge and advance humanity to new heights. They argued that the language could be used to benefit all of humanity if they combined it with the Xerthians' technology. But others were more cautious. They feared that trusting the Xerthians would only lead to another attempt at domination, and that the power of the ancient language should remain in human hands alone. The debate grew heated as the stakes became higher and higher. Some believed that the Xerthians were merely biding their time, waiting for humanity to expose itself to be easily controlled, while others saw it as a chance for a new beginning, a chance to reach for the stars without fear. Amidst the tension, a group of leaders from the most influential human factions made a bold decision. They chose to meet with the Xerthians face to face in a neutral location. They believed that direct communication would allow them to better understand the aliens' true intentions and determine whether an alliance could be forged. But as the representatives of humanity arrived aboard the Xerthian vessel, they were greeted with a chilling revelation. The Xerthians had never truly been interested in an alliance at all. They had been studying humanity's use of the language for far longer than anyone had realized, and they had been manipulating the very situation that had led to the human divisions in order to exploit the power of the ancient language for their own gain. The truth was far darker than anyone could have imagined. The Xerthians had known about the language for centuries and had tried to suppress it before, but now that it was awakening in humanity, they realized that they needed to harness it themselves before it was too late. They had not come to share knowledge, but to take control of the most powerful force the universe had ever known. The humans had been played from the beginning, and now the Xerthians were ready to claim what they believed was rightfully theirs. As the truth sank in, the humans felt a deep sense of betrayal. The Xerthians had never come in peace. They had been watching and waiting for the right moment to strike. Once they realized the ancient language had reawakened within humanity, they had begun to manipulate events, pushing humanity to the brink of division and conflict, all in the hopes of gaining control of the language and its immense power. The betrayal was a heavy blow to the humans who had hoped for a chance at true cooperation with the Xerthians, but now they saw that the alien race had only ever seen them as pawns in a larger game. With this revelation came a new sense of urgency. Humanity could no longer afford to remain divided or uncertain. They had to unite or risk falling under the control of an alien race that sought nothing less than to dominate them using the very language that had once been their salvation. The human leaders who had gathered for the negotiation quickly realized that they needed to act fast. They had to expose the Xerthians' true intentions to the world and rally their people before it was too late. But the Xerthians had anticipated this move and had already begun to tighten their grip on the situation. As the Xerthian forces made their move to seize control of the ancient language, the humans rallied together in a last-ditch effort to resist. They knew that the language itself could be used to stop the Xerthians, but it would take all of their power and unity to do so. Those who had mastered the language formed a coalition of the most powerful human factions and began to speak with one voice. The words they uttered reverberated through the air, like thunder shaking the very foundation of reality itself. The energy they unleashed was unlike anything the Xerthians had seen before. Their ships faltered, and their technology began to malfunction as the humans wove the language around them with unparalleled precision. The battle that ensued was unlike any conflict in history. The Xerthians fought with their advanced technology and weaponry, but they were no match for the raw power of the ancient language when used by a unified humanity. The humans began to manipulate the very fabric of space and time itself, altering the battlefield with every word spoken. They tore apart the Xerthian ships with ease, their weapons disintegrating in midair as the humans bent the laws of nature to their will. The Xerthians had underestimated them once again, but this time there would be no escape for the alien race. In the final moments of the conflict, the humans made a decisive move. They spoke a word with such power and conviction that it shattered the Xerthian command center and sent their fleet scattering in all directions. The remaining Xerthian forces fled the planet, knowing that they could not defeat a humanity that had mastered a power greater than anything they had ever known. As the dust settled and the humans stood victorious, they realized that they had not only defeated the Xerthians, but had also forged a new path for their future. They had learned to harness the ancient language not as a weapon of destruction, but as a tool for creation and unity. They had become the true masters of the language, and with it they would chart their own course among the stars. Humanity had proven that no one could ridicule them, no one could dominate them, no one could control them again. They had unlocked a power that could shake the universe itself, and they would use it to build a future of their own making.